Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, are women less likely to be corrupt than men? I'll be talking shortly to gender and corruption specialist Galia Melendez, who will also explain how in any case women do experience corruption differently to men. And the small but growing number of female actors who are moving to behind the camera. Hollywood stars Scarlett Johansson and Kristen Stewart were among those making their directorial debut at Cannes this year. But first, and in 2024, Transparency International's annual index revealed corruption continues to be a dangerous problem in every part of the world. So societies struggle with this epidemic. Is it the case that women are less likely to be corrupt than men? Certainly in recent decades, a clear link has been reported between countries that have high levels of corruption with low levels of gender equality. This especially is the case when it comes to female political participation. With me in the studio is Galia Melendez, a gender and corruption specialist who's based in Paris and has been working in the international sphere. Galia, thank you so much for your time. When you apply a gender lens to corruption, are women impacted more than men?
So to answer this question, we need to understand that corruption is deeply rooted in patriarchal norms. So when we talk about women being more impacted by corruption, we see it from a direct way, which is for the gender roles, they are more exposed to corruption. They go to healthcare services, education, where there's more risk of corruption. The second element is also that the bribe. When they ask for bribes, women have less revenues to pay for those bribes and therefore less access to these essential services. But I think the most important element of direct corruption is the element of sextortion, of corruption, or sexual corruption, which the International Women Judges Association defines as the use of power, of authority to have a sexual advantage. And that specifically affects women because if they cannot pay the bribes, they will essentially be facing on this phenomenon of sextortion.
Do women have different approaches or different views about corruption compared to men, or is that a rather simplistic approach?
It is a simplistic approach. This question of whether we as women are a fairer sex. It was implemented 20 years ago when the first research came with this correlation between higher level of women in governments, lower corruption. But then it was challenged with other studies that it was not about fairer sex, but fairer systems that are more democratic, that they have better checks on corruption, and therefore actually allow women to get into government. But it is simplistic and it is very quick fix, and in my view, a dangerous element because we take aside the element of gender. We just concentrate in gender alone and not really the systematic issues that make the corruption exist.
And this comes back to the fact in terms of an institutional approach, and that so far there are far less women in positions of power and influence in multiple spheres.
Yeah, it is. Women have less opportunities to be corrupted because these still are in a very inner male-centric boys club, let's say, that they don't have actually the opportunities. So there were different theories that come about from the 2000s until now that are trying to figure out this correlation. And especially we are trying to see where women are more impacted and why.
Galia, let's just take a pause there because it's not only women whistleblowers who can find themselves in the line of fire, but those who professionally seek to expose corrupt practices, such as Marilu Mastro Giovani, an Italian investigative journalist who's been covering the activities of the mafia in southern Italy for 25 years, as this extract from the France 24's programme Reporters reveals.
Each one of her articles raises awareness about the collusion between organised crime and political power.
Un'altra grossa inchiesta era sulla discarica di Burgesi.
One of my most important investigations was on the landfill site of Borghese.
Aveva sversato fusti.
The mafia has buried hundreds of barrels of PCB, polychlorinated biphenol, both on the site but also on adjacent land. And these barrels of toxic waste come from businesses in the north of Italy who got rid of them illegally by using the Sacra Corona Unita.
It was this investigation that marked the beginning of Marilu's problems.
They broke into the building on several occasions. Then there was theft. They stole all the editorial team's computers, 7 in total, and in order to steal these computers, they broke down a wall.
This morning, the journalist has to appear in court in Lecce for 2 trials for defamation.
Questa è la nuova modalità.
It's their new strategy, a new strategy used by the mafia to intimidate journalists, because it causes considerable personal costs, but also financial and professional costs. We pay a very high price to do this job.
Today, the mayor of a small town is accusing her of writing about his connection to the mafia.
I'm an investigative journalist. I don't only base my arguments on facts that have been made public through judicial investigations. I make my own inquiries, using journalistic methods, of which there are many. I always use documents that are on open data, and therefore they're documents in the public domain. They're available to all, but no one looks at them.
Bizarrely, at the end of the hearing, the mayor's lawyers remained silent.
It gives me hope. If I'm declared guilty, I could go to prison. I don't know how long for exactly. Several years.
Watching that report with me is Galia Melendez, a gender and corruption specialist. A reminder there, Galia, that those women journalists who report on corruption can themselves be targeted too.
Yeah, and exactly that's the main reason why women don't report, because they are very much afraid from the retaliation, and as well they are afraid to even report and seek redress. So this is the main issue that we see with women whistleblowers, that they are higher risk to expose themselves, and they, let's say, lose more if they report and they put themselves, their lives, their work at risk for reporting. This is also the reason why we need mechanisms that are gender sensitive or victim centered, that help women to approach justice, to report corruption, and essentially just like to be part of like the whistleblowers that are so essential to attack corruption.
When it comes to increasing levels of protection, I mean, I imagine that's key. What should governments and authorities across the world be doing? And also, I think at the same time, and I assume, educating people about the dangers of corruption is also vital.
Yeah. I will start with, first of all, having gender analysis whenever we are going to have an anti-corruption strategy is always missing in every strategy that I see. And as well, that also makes loopholes in the law. We don't have, for example, the definition of sextortion in anti-corruption laws, but also in gender-based violence laws. So there's a lack of legal backgrounds there. At the same time, the mechanisms should be transparent, safe, and accessible for women whistleblowers. We also see working in solos between the gender equality agenda and the anti-corruption efforts. They don't work with each other, and it's essential that to build bridges in order to actually do something, not only for the reduction of gender inequality, but also to attack properly corruption. And finally, coming back to the fairer sex theory, we should have more women in the anti-corruption strategies, not as the source of anti-corruption, but because it is important to have them in every single stage of an anti-corruption strategy to actually face and change the male-centric classic definition of corruption.
Galia, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And finally, Hollywood stars Scarlett Johansson and Kristen Stewart were among those making their directorial debut at Cannes this year. As more and more actresses shift into filmmaking roles, Olivia Salazar-Winspear takes a look at some of their movies.
Their faces have all graced the big screen at Cannes. Now these actresses have gone behind the camera to present their own perspectives. Kristen Stewart's debut feature screened in the Un Certain Regard sidebar section, and having shifted from teen drama in the Twilight films to European indie cinema in her on-screen career, she's now taken Lydia Yuknavitch's memoir, The Chronology of Water, as the basis for her film, which deals with sexuality and darker, more violent themes. Stewart says she was inspired by the story's reframing of trauma and memory.
Oh, you mean like all of these truths can change? I can change them? All the things that I thought were facts that happened to me, you mean like storytelling saves lives? But I don't have to accept the prescribed story that is being shoved down my throat as a woman.
From life-saving to life-affirming, Scarlett Johansson's exploring unreliable narratives in her first film, Eleanor the Great. Its protagonist borrows the story of a Holocaust survivor, sparking an unexpected intergenerational friendship, with June Squibb and Erin Kellyman in leading roles. There's also a strong female cast in Hafsia Herzi's latest film. The French director first stepped onto the red carpet at Cannes as an actress 14 years ago. Since then, she's directed 4 feature-length films. One of them, Bonne Mère, was presented in a sidebar section in 2021, but this year the stakes are even higher. Her film The Little Sister is in the official competition. It's an adaptation of Fatima Das's novel, drawing on her own adolescence.
Arrête ton blabla là. C'est bon, je sais ce que c'est de pas s'assumer, pas être bien dans sa peau, tout ça, mais à un moment, faut vivre, non?
And since the story deals with religion and homosexuality, Herzi struggled to secure financing for the production.
The subject matter clearly bothered some people, but that didn't stop me fighting to get the film made. In fact, it made me want to do it more.
Herzi's been applauded for her delicate approach to her actors' performances, suggesting we should be seeing her in the director's chair again, sooner rather than later.
And that's it for this edition, so until our next show, bye for now.